Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly one of the most ambitious logistical puzzles of our entire lifetime, the 100% CO2 reduction plan. We're going to unpack the massive blueprint required to transition our entire energy system to complete climate neutrality. It's happening right now, and it's absolutely going to change everything.
2045. That single number right there, that's our ultimate monumental ambition. Mandated by the Climate Change Act, this is the hard deadline for achieving a 100% reduction in CO2. That means completely rethinking the whole shebang, from heavy industrial manufacturing right down to how you brew your morning coffee, all in just 2 decades.
All right, let's start with part 1, the net zero ambition.
So, getting to net zero? It isn't just about, switching off coal and turning on wind turbines. It's actually a really delicate balancing act defined by the energy policy square. We absolutely have to achieve climate sustainability, but we must do it while maintaining global responsibility, ensuring economic affordability, and, perhaps most crucially, retaining social acceptance. Because if this transition breaks the bank or completely alienates the public, the whole thing stalls.
Moving on to part 2, fixing the buildings gap.
When we actually compare our legal targets to our current reality, a pretty glaring issue pops right up. The Climate Change Act sets strict greenhouse gas reduction targets through 2030, right? But the reality is, the building sector, literally the places where we live and work, has entirely failed to meet its targets from 2020 to 2025. We are seriously lagging behind here, and we need major action to get back on track for 2045.
If we track historical emissions across different sectors, like energy, industry, and transport, one massive outlier really stands out. Notice the section representing buildings. The projected pathways show a huge, considerable gap between where we're headed and where we absolutely need to be by 2030. That is the gap we have to close, for sure.
And a massive part of solving that gap, well, it actually comes down to our basements. Looking at newly installed heating systems in Germany over the last 15 years, you can easily see the historical reliance on gas and oil. But notice the recent surge representing renewable tech, like heat pumps. This physical shift in our actual hardware is totally foundational, but it really needs to happen way, way faster.
Which brings us to part 3, smart tech and new policies. The cool thing is, the solutions don't always require massive infrastructure projects. Take the smart thermostat, for example. It's kind of like having a tiny, climate-conscious butler in your house. It literally learns your daily routines, pulls in real-time weather data, and uses occupancy sensors so you aren't just heating empty rooms. That simple piece of tech can reduce your heating energy by 10 to 20%. That brings immediate CO2 savings straight into your living room, with basically zero extra effort on your part.
Working right alongside that smart tech are 3 main levers of government policy. First up, we've got regulations, like mandating that new heating systems use 65% renewable energy. Second are economic instruments. This means shifting subsidies to help regular folks actually afford the upgrades, and splitting CO2 costs between landlords and tenants. And finally, information. Tools like energy performance certificates that give consumers the transparency they need to make better choices.
Let's jump to part 4, upgrading the local grid.
Because here's the thing, none of those smart homes or new policies work without the physical wires connecting them all together. And this brings us to a really vital concept called power to heat, which is part of a broader trend called sector coupling. Traditionally, our electricity, heating, and transportation were entirely separate worlds, right? Well, sector coupling means we are now plugging our heating and our cars directly into the electrical grid to maximize renewable energy use. It's incredibly efficient, but it also means our local grids are about to take on a massive new workload.
To handle that crazy surge in demand, distribution system operators are entirely rethinking their timelines. They are proactively designing the grid to handle up to 15 million electric vehicles by 2030, alongside a massive influx of heat pumps and solar panels. To make sure the infrastructure doesn't just buckle under the pressure, operators are taking huge grid expansions originally slated for 2029 and actually pulling them forward to between 2022 and 2028.
And these network operators aren't just building a green grid for us, they are overhauling their own operations too. By committing to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, they're aiming to make their own technical cycles and networks completely climate neutral by 2030. Think about that. That is a full 15 years ahead of the national 2045 target.
And that brings us to part 5, the path forward.
So, what does this massive orchestration of grids, policies, and thermostats actually mean for you and me?
Well, it's really important to remember that this blueprint goes way beyond just hitting a carbon target. Transforming our buildings and upgrading our grid fundamentally shields our economy. It drastically reduces our reliance on imported fossil fuels and increases our resilience against those wild energy price spikes we've all felt recently. Ultimately, a smart home and a robust grid literally protect our wallets and our quality of life.
As we wrap up this explainer, it's pretty clear that the national energy systems and local grids are already pouring the concrete for 2045. The policies are in place, the grid is expanding, and the smart tech is sitting right there on the shelves. Which leaves us with one vital, provocative question to ask ourselves as we look at our own driveways and basements. The grid is getting ready for 100% CO2 reduction. Is your home